So last month I finished my April block a little early because I wanted to do something a little different this month. Specifically, I want to add some custom applique to the first 4 blocks that I have done, and I thought that I'd take the time to show you my process and sort of why I made certain decisions about things. So I'm going to be using Affinity Designer for iPad, and we're going to start with font because that's where I started. So I don't want my letters to be too thick or too thin. I don't want any serif. They're too complicated. I want minimal curves, and I just want something interesting, not like the sort of run-of-the-mill block letters that you see people use a lot. I wanted something that would stand out and have a little bit of style, you know? So here are the fonts I tried out. So this would be, you know, your boring, nothing fancy block letters. And another version, a little thicker. Thicker actually would be better if I were going with block letters. This font is sort of interesting. It's a little taller. The letters are smushed a little bit more, but specifically around the J right here, I didn't like how thin it got. I mean, every letter has a pretty thin part, and that would be sort of difficult to handle if you're going to do hand applique. This one is a little rounder, a little more interesting, but still not quite what I was looking for. Again, this one has a little more personality, but if you look right here, that would be a real pain to hand applique. So pass. So, I mean, I went through all the fonts that I have, and I just couldn't find, let's see, here are all my fonts. I tried them all, and I just couldn't find one that worked for me. So I went to Creative Market, and I looked at their fonts, and there's so many beautiful fonts. I love them. This Quirk, that one's fun. Evangeline is interesting, but that would be way too difficult. Just so much beautiful work done here. I love Creative Market. But I couldn't find, you know, that perfect applique font that I was looking for. And it's like completely subjective. I mean, a ton of these would have worked, but I just couldn't find the one that I had been wanting, you know, the one that I had thought up in my head, you know. I couldn't find that perfect font. So I went back to my workbook, and I started thinking about how I might customize a font. And I remembered that this font here in particular, it does something interesting when you add capital letters. So it looks like it's in all caps, but actually it's not. If you do caps, some of the letters have these flourishes, and that got me thinking, like, okay, we've got some interesting movement. We have some curve to the A and the N, but I still wasn't quite happy with it. So what I did was I added an outline, and I bumped the outline up quite a bit, which was better, I think, but it still is sort of narrow. So I just sort of stretched it until it got to the point where I was it looked a little more bulky, a little more bold, easier to work with, I think. The only problem I had now was all of these little rounded points, right? That would be such a pain to have to prep all these little rounded corners. So I thought maybe I could just cut the points off. So let's see. I could just erase the points, right? Let's duplicate that. And then also on these flourishes, I could cut off those points. And so I'll print it out like how it shows up here without the curves taken off. And then when I trace them onto my interfacing or my freezer paper, I'll just draw some straight lines over them. And I want to show you how they turned out. So of course I had to mirror them, because if you don't, you're going to get a jumble of unreadable text. So they're flipped, and I'm going to trace them and modify them on the freezer paper that I'm going to use. Okay, now let's get to the fun part. After all that font talk, we're going to look at the actual bears. So this is January, and I knew that I wanted to incorporate 2021 in it, and then I wanted to incorporate snow somehow. So here we go. Here's my 2021 and my January, and I toyed around with the idea of, like, you know, snow falling or snowballs or something, but I wasn't liking it. It was looking sort of cluttered. And then I thought, I thought of this hill that gets all snowy, and people all around the area will go and line up and sled down this big hill. And so I thought, you know what, just like a snowbank would be nice. And so I've got this very minimal, crisp, snowy landscape going on with January. So minimal, but I think it makes a big impact. Next is February. I knew from the beginning that I wanted to give him hard eyes. I don't know why. I knew I wanted that, but it didn't seem like enough, you know, compared to January. It seemed sort of like it was missing something. And so I toyed around with a couple ideas. Too many hearts, you know, it looks a little cluttered. I thought maybe a love note, but it was sort of boring, but also complex at the same time, because there's like, I'd have to cut out these tiny little X's and O's, and I'd have several layers of fabric on this one piece of little applique. And then I started to try to think of something that was a little bit more outside the box, and I thought, what about an arrow striking a heart? I don't like these colors, by the way. This purple, I have no idea what colors I'm going to use. It needs work. But I liked the movement from up here and then the curve here. You know, it kind of pulls your eyes down and brings attention to February. So I thought that was fun. Don't pay attention to the colors. I'm hoping it'll look better when it's actually done. Next is March. My little leprechaun bear. He's so cute. I went through a couple ideas with him too. I thought maybe a pot of gold, but nothing I worked out was really, you know, anything that I wanted to do. And then I thought of maybe the Irish flag. I found out I don't have any orange in my stash, so that one I'd have to go and buy a piece of orange fabric just for this one tiny little flag. And plus it was sort of boring, you know, so those were both out. And then I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna go boring. I'm gonna go clover. And then it came down to, where am I gonna put my clover, right? And I sort of liked how up above it echoes the 2021 from January, but it seems unbalanced because this corner is all empty. I wanted something that would sort of balance out my March over here. So I tried this out. Again, sort of boring. And finally I landed on this. I like the curve, you know, there's some motion and it's bringing your eye down. The one up in the corner though, that one, I'm not sure if I'm going to I can't decide if I'm going to do that one or not. So I'll probably prepare it and then see how it looks on the actual block. And then I'll take it from there. And then finally, we've got April here. And I made him gray on purpose because I was thinking about, April showers bring May flowers. And I was thinking April's going to be sort of rainy and dreary. And so he's gray, like a storm cloud. And so it was really easy to come up with his theme, Rain showers. The only problem here that I encountered was how I placed my teardrop, raindrop shapes. Because if you're not careful, if you put it too close to, let's get him. If you put it too close to his eye, he looks like he's crying. Too close to his nose, it looks like he has a snotty nose, or too close to his mouth, it looks like he's drooling. So I had to find a way to avoid those problem areas and still keep the piece looking balanced. And I hope I managed that. So that's what I'm planning to do for my 4 bears. Let's look at them again real quick. So I went through one by one and I copied all of these shapes over to another canvas. Here it is. And I took away the color and just added an outline, except for my 2021 here. And I didn't have to reverse any of the shapes because they're pretty symmetrical. But I did need to reverse the 2021. And up here in the corner is my my little guide to make sure that my pieces are printing out at the right scale. The pieces that were a little more complicated were the clouds and the snow because they're longer than a piece of paper is. So I had to cut them in half and make these little notches so that I can put them back together again accurately. But I think that's going to work out pretty well. And I'll show you my process for doing that a little later. But now I'm going to go and prep my my freezer paper and my interfacing, and I'm going to pick out my color palette. And so I'll see you over in the sewing room.